He loved her for 6 years, gave her peace, gave her space. But when she walked back in, hoping for forgiveness, she found a stranger, a man who no longer needed to raise his voice to destroy her, because the man she betrayed didn't scream, he planned, and his silence wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of a revenge she never saw coming. The morning Kellen Hayes opened the door and watched his wife, Ivy, walk out with 2 small suitcases, he didn't say a word, not because he had nothing to say, but because something inside him had already let go. Ivy didn't cry, didn't flinch. She looked at him with the kind of expression that said she'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. "I need space, Kellen," she said, voice level. "Time to figure myself out." He nodded, silent, calm, not because he agreed, but because he refused to beg someone to stay who didn't want to. She turned and walked past him. The soft click of the door behind her echoed like a funeral bell. Kellen stood there for a moment, towel still in hand from drying dishes, heart oddly still. The silence felt louder than any argument they'd ever had. He went back to washing plates, wiped the counters, folded the laundry, swept the floors. The stillness of the house settled around him like dust, not the kind that chokes, but the kind that blankets. Masks. At the office. He showed up early, stayed late. The CEO called him Mr. Dependable. At the gym, his focus was sharp. At the grocery store, he got what he needed and didn't linger. Routine became his therapy. Silence, his sanctuary. Friends checked in. His sister Lily called often. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening. Her voice cautious, like she couldn't tell if she was talking to a man in pain or a man pretending not to be. "I'm adjusting," he replied. "One day at a time." But Lily wasn't buying it. You two were together 6 years. People don't just turn that off. "I'm not turning anything off," Kellen said. "I'm just not chasing ghosts." His best friend Sean dropped by with a 6-pack and a familiar look only childhood friends wear, half concern, half curiosity. "She left and you're vacuuming?" Sean asked with a grin. "Not even one meltdown?" Kellen shrugged. "Would that help?" Sean stared at him, waiting for some raw emotion to crawl out. But Kellen just looked at the muted TV. He didn't owe anyone a breakdown. What no one realized was this. Kellen had felt Ivy slipping away long before the suitcases. The warmth in her voice had faded. The text got shorter. The eye contact vanished like dew at sunrise. So when she left, he didn't break. He adjusted, like someone patching a roof before the storm. One night, while folding laundry, he found one of her old sweaters. Pale blue, worn at the sleeves. Her favorite. He held it, waited for something, nostalgia, sadness, but nothing came. Just calm. The next day, he boxed up her things. One for clothes. One for toiletries. One for the books she never read. Labeled them all. Stacked them in the garage. Still no tears. No calls. No begging for closure. Until Tyler came over. It was a rainy Thursday, one of those nights you cancel plans. But Tyler didn't. He showed up at Kellen's door, hair damp, expression tight. "Dude," he said as Kellen let him in, "I saw Ivy." Kellen raised a brow. Waited. She was at Dockside Bar. 3 nights ago. With some guy. Not just friends. Real close. Laughing. Already a thing like they've been a thing. Kellen didn't flinch. He filled a glass with water. Took a sip. Tyler stared. "That doesn't bother you?" "She asked for space," Kellen said. "That's what she's doing with it." "You sure you're not just numb?" Kellen set down the glass. "I'm sure I'm done." But what no one knew, what Kellen hadn't told a soul, was that he'd known about Ivy's affair before she ever packed her bags. The subtle lies, the longer work dinners, the perfume she said was a sample. He had seen her locations. Had even stood outside a cafe one afternoon, just far enough to see her hand resting on another man's thigh across the table. He hadn't confronted her, because Kellen was a man who raged or crumbled. He was a man who planned, who built his revenge with silence and patience. Because while Ivy thought she was leaving a man who didn't care, she had no idea she was waking up the part of him that doesn't forgive, that doesn't forget, the part that makes sure you remember what you lost when it's too late to get it back. 3 weeks after Ivy left, Kellen answered the door mid-shower, towel still damp around his neck. And there she was. Same woman, different energy. Hair messy, lips parted like she'd rehearsed something and forgot the words. Arms crossed, not in defense, but like she was holding something broken inside her. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. He didn't move, didn't smile, just stood still, waiting for her to realize how absurd her return was. "I've been thinking," she continued, "these past few weeks, being alone, it made me realize how much I miss us. You, everything. I thought I needed space, but..." Her voice cracked. "I think I just needed to understand how much I loved you." Kellen didn't blink. "Loved?" he asked. "I love you," she corrected, eyes brimming. "Still do." He let the silence stretch until it hurt, then turned, walked to the kitchen. She followed cautiously, like a guest in someone else's home. Everything was different, colder, curated. Even the air. He opened a drawer, pulled out a silver key, held it out. "What's this?" she asked. "Garage," he said. "Your boxes are in there. Clothes, books, the rest." Her breath hitched. "Kellen, what? I thought we were..." "There is no we," he said. Calm. Final. "Not anymore." "You're really going to throw away 6 years? Just like that?" "I didn't throw anything. You did. When you traded truth for whatever that was at Dockside." Her face flushed. "You had me followed?" "No," he said. "You just forgot the world is small. And lies don't stay hidden, especially in a town like this. This is a city where I know everyone who matters." "Kellen," she whispered. "It wasn't serious. He was just a mistake." His eyes locked on hers, unflinching. "Then you should have made fewer of them." She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand. "You don't get to rewrite what happened." Ivy's voice trembled. "We built a life here. This house, these plans, this..." He cut her off. "It's mine. Always was. Your name's not on the deed. You moved in. You moved out. And you can move on." She stared at him like she was searching for the version of him who used to tuck her in at night, rub her shoulders after long days, kiss her forehead in the quiet moments. But that man had died in silence. "You didn't even ask why I left," she said, trying one last time. "Don't you want to know what was wrong?" "I already knew," he replied. "You needed attention. You needed a thrill. And you thought I was just a placeholder until you found it." Tears escaped down her cheek. "You were the only thing that ever made me feel safe." Kellen didn't soften. "Then why'd you go looking for danger?" Ivy shook her head, stepping back. "You've changed." He walked to the door and opened it. "No, I just stopped pretending I didn't see who you really were." She hesitated, hoping for one last plea, one last crack in his armor, but there was none. He gave her 10 minutes to load her car and leave. Outside, she carried box after box alone, her tears soaking the sleeves of the hoodie she used to steal from him on winter nights. There was no dramatic goodbye, no music swelling in the background, just the sound of cardboard shifting, of rubber soles crunching gravel, of a door that would never open for her again. Kellen stood inside, watching without expression, because this wasn't heartbreak. This was justice, and it had only just begun. While Ivy thought this was the end of her punishment, Kellen's revenge had just taken its first breath. By the time Ivy pulled away from the house for the last time, her face was streaked with tears and the trunk was full of regrets. She didn't know the worst was still to come. Kellen didn't celebrate. He didn't drink. He didn't post cryptic quotes on social media like the emotionally wounded. He sharpened his silence into precision and began the slow, methodical destruction of the life she thought she could run back to. He started with the basics. Closed the shared accounts, changed passwords, canceled streaming services, redirected the mail. But that wasn't revenge. That was just housekeeping. The real plan ran deeper. Kellen had always kept a private file, a personal document, never stored online. He never expected to need it, but he had it, and it was real. Photos, screenshots, bank transfers Ivy thought he didn't know about, a receipt from a boutique in Denver when she claimed she was at her cousin's baby shower, a boarding pass from a last-minute weekend trip that wasn't on their shared calendar, And then there was the email. Subject line, Miss Friday already, from a man named Travis Decker. Kellen never opened it. He didn't need to. He'd already seen enough. Kellen was patient, but never passive. He didn't scream when betrayed. He built. A week after Ivy's departure, he scheduled a quiet meeting with Camila Rhodes, a local attorney, not for divorce, but corporate rebranding. While Ivy had been figuring herself out, Kellen had been reinventing himself. Now, with nothing tying him down emotionally, he doubled his hours, diving into the AI predictive logistics tool he'd shelved for a year. A project he once told Ivy he was afraid to pursue because they needed stability first. Now, he had all the time and silence he needed. The team grew. Investors responded. Within 2 months, he'd signed a deal that put him in the economic bracket Ivy once said he'd never reach because he was too cautious. Meanwhile, Ivy spiraled. It started small, a text, "Hey, just wondering how you been." No reply. Then a call. Then 2. Voicemails. "Kellen, I know I messed up. I know, but people make mistakes. Please don't throw everything away." He blocked her. When that didn't work, she drove to his office, only to be stopped by security at the front desk. His name was on the building now. Not hers. Not theirs. She tried to rebound. Reached out to Travis, the same man she'd once laughed with over drinks. When she told him she was pregnant, he offered support for the child, not for her. He left town a week later, moved back to Arizona to be with his ex. He promised child support. Nothing more. Ivy's world collapsed. And still, she thought maybe, just maybe, Kellen would step in. So when she saw his best friend Sean at the grocery store, she made her move. "Does he ever talk about me?" she asked, eyes hopeful. Sean hesitated. "You don't want the answer to that." "I need him to know I'm sorry," she said. "He already knows," Sean replied. "He just doesn't care anymore." And that was worse than hate. That was annihilation. Back at Kellen's house, no, his home, everything had changed. The lighting was warmer, furniture rearranged, walls freshly painted. The scent of cinnamon replaced Ivy's rose vanilla perfume. One Saturday, his sister Lily came by, sitting across from him on the porch. "She came to my apartment," Lily said softly. Kellen looked up. "Ivy." Lily nodded. "Wanted me to talk to you. Said she's desperate. She's pregnant." "Kel," his face didn't move. "Not mine." "I know," Lily said quickly. She admitted that, but she's scared. Alone. Said she made the biggest mistake of her life. Kellen turned his gaze skyward, clouds rolling softly overhead. Then he said, with a calmness that had become his signature, "Some mistakes don't come with second chances." Lily placed a hand over his. "I'm proud of you. You didn't just survive this. You grew." He gave her a faint smile. "I didn't want revenge." "You sure?" she asked. He met her eyes. "No, I wanted clarity. Revenge just happened to be the side effect." Back in her cold, cramped apartment, Ivy sat alone, holding her stomach, wondering how she had gone from everything to nothing. But the truth was, she never loved Kellen the way he deserved. And now she would never get the chance again, because the man she betrayed didn't need to ruin her publicly. He didn't need to ruin her at all. He just needed to let her live with the weight of knowing she ruined herself. The air in Ivy's apartment was always cold, no matter how high she turned the thermostat. The windows rattled in the wind, and the floorboards creaked when she paced at night. Restless, wide-eyed, and haunted by a name she could no longer say aloud without her chest aching, Kellen. It had been 3 months since the last time she saw him, since the garage, since the final dismissal that shattered everything she thought she still had a grip on. She looked different now, thinner, slower. Shadows lived beneath her eyes that no makeup could hide. The pregnancy wasn't physically difficult, but emotionally it hollowed her, not because of the baby, but because of the silence. No one came to check on her, not Travis, who ghosted her after a single, awkward conversation about co-parenting, not her old friends, who had quietly disappeared when the glow of her relationship with Kellen vanished, not even Kellen's sister, Lily, who had tried, until Ivy showed up at her office for the second time uninvited. "I can't be the bridge anymore," Lily had said gently. "You don't understand. He was my home." Ivy had pleaded. "No," Lily replied softly. "He was your blessing, and you burned it." That word stuck. Every ultrasound, every appointment. She went alone. She'd sit in the waiting room, scrolling through old photos of her and Kellen. Her favorite was from Colorado. He was smiling under a snowfall, arm around her waist. She looked like she had everything. Because back then, she did. Now she had only regret. Kellen, meanwhile, was flying to New York. His software company, Axis Forge, had just been acquired in a 7-figure deal. He had been invited to speak at a major tech conference. In less than a year, he had gone from quietly dependable to one of the most respected names in predictive automation. But the success hadn't changed him. It clarified him. He bought a new house, smaller, but full of light, filled with the things he loved. Nothing that reminded him of Ivy. A record player, a stack of crime novels, a coffee maker that brewed his favorite roast, just the way he liked it. He had even started dating again, slowly. There was no rush. He wasn't trying to fill a void. He was whole now. One Sunday morning, jogging through a park near his new home, he spotted a familiar figure on a bench, wrapped in a gray sweater that swallowed her frame. Ivy, pale, pregnant, lost. She hadn't seen him. He stood still for a moment, breathing in the cold air, flooded with memories, but not pain, just clarity. Then he turned and jogged the other way. He didn't owe her anything. Not words, not comfort, not closure. He had given her everything once, and she gave it to someone else. Ivy noticed him too late, just a glimpse of his back as he disappeared into the trees. She started to stand, heart racing, but her legs wouldn't move fast enough. She sank back down because deep down she knew it wouldn't matter what she said. He wasn't turning around. That night, she sat on the floor of her apartment, one hand on her stomach, the other holding a piece of paper, a letter to Kellen. She had rewritten it a dozen times. Each one started the same, "I'm sorry." Each one ended with, "Please come back." But she never sent it. Every time she tore it up, because she already knew what he would say. Nothing. That was a final revenge. Kellen didn't have to ruin her. He simply had to remove himself from the life of someone who underestimated the depth of his love and the strength of his absence. That morning, the rain was relentless. A cold drizzle soaked the sidewalks and blurred the skyline. Ivy stood outside the Axis Forge tower, an envelope clutched in her hand, her coat fluttering open in the wind. She had no appointment. She didn't care. Her hair was wet. Her shoes were too. But she waited just outside the revolving doors like a ghost, desperate for absolution. Kellen exited around noon. Tailored charcoal coat, leather briefcase in one hand, Bluetooth in the other. He looked like he belonged to a world she couldn't reach anymore. She stepped into his path. He stopped. Their eyes locked. 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds where the world held its breath. "I just wanted to give you," she said, extending the envelope. Handwritten. No return address. He looked at it, then at her. "What's in it?" he asked quietly. "My truth," she whispered. He looked down at her stomach, round beneath her coat now. The child will be born soon. Weeks maybe. He shook his head slowly. "It's too late for that. Kellen, please. I'm not asking you to come back. I need you to read it. I need you to know. I wasn't trying to hurt you." "You did hurt me," he said, voice flat. "You just didn't think you'd have to watch me get better without you." Her lips parted, but she had no words. She looked down, then back up. "There's a name in there," she said quietly. "For the baby, I want to give him your last name." Kellen didn't move. He wasn't angry. He was tired. "You want my name on a child that isn't mine?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. "Not legally. Just symbolically. For him to know what kind of man I should have loved, right? To carry your strength into the world, even if I couldn't." It was desperation. It was grief. It was a woman drowning beneath the weight of her own betrayal. "I don't need a legacy in your child's life," he said softly. "I needed loyalty in mine." Then, almost gently, he took a step back. The envelope slipped from her hand, fluttered to the ground. Kellen didn't look back. Ivy fell to her knees, not from the pain in her body, but from the finality in his silence. She stayed there long after he was gone, until a security guard offered to call someone. But there was no one to call. That night, she sat by her window, one hand resting on her belly, whispering lullabies through her tears. She would raise her son. She would try to teach him strength, kindness, consequences. But there would always be a name she could never say again without breaking. Kellen. Months later, in a sunlit cafe in Boston, Kellen sipped coffee across from a woman named Brooke, a colleague he met at the conference. They talked about books, dogs, quiet mornings. She had warm eyes and a laugh that came easily. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people beginning again. Brooke stepped away to take a call. Kellen leaned back, watching the city breathe outside the window, and he smiled. He had survived the fire, and now he was blooming through the ashes,